Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. This is Rusty and Heather Bryant, and we're glad to be back with you again this week. And we're going to continue our series that we started last week. And this is kind of in response, not response, I guess, but just inspired by. We'll say it's inspired by our oldest son getting engaged recently, and made us kind of think about, man, what we wish we would have known about marriage when we were engaged, before we actually got married. And so kind of this, what would we like our boys to know before they get married about marriage? And what would we like other couples that are thinking about getting married or are engaged, but then not just that, but like the people that are in the middle of their marriage, and they're like, we didn't do that.
That's right. We didn't get that right.
We didn't get that right. We should have done that. And so maybe it's stuff that you just need to go, nobody gave us instruction on this, and so let's make some adjustments.
Yeah, and it's okay to be like, this is weird to go ahead and do this now in the middle of our marriage, but that's okay. Like, it's okay to be weird and to say, you know what, we didn't get this right in the first part of our marriage, but we can see how this could lead down a wrong path, or I see where I need to change my view on this, or we need to put this into place, all of those things, and be able to continue that forward.
Yep. So you have this list, this long list.
It's a long list. It's a long list.
No, it's fine. We knocked out a couple of them last week, and we just kind of have said we're just going to talk about them for a bit, because they're not really engagement topics necessarily. They're marriage topics. But it's those things that we're like, gosh, I wish we had known this. So today, where are we going?
Yeah, so today's topic, I think that not only does it apply to engaged couples, dating couples, and of course, when you're married, but it's also one of those topics that I think you're going to have to sit down with your spouse and say, what do we think about this? What do we think about this topic? Because we're going to tell what works for us. We're going to tell what we know to be true and what has worked and what has not worked. But then also, it's something that you may have to decide something different with your spouse. And the topic is boundaries. Now, there are 3 subtitles under that. And so, maybe we'll get to all of them today, maybe not. But the first one is, and I'll go ahead and tell what both of them are. So the first one is boundaries with your extended family. Because we know that once you get married, Scripture tells us to leave and to cleave, and that you are your new family. The 2 of you are your new family. And then if you're married and have children, y'all are that family. And so what are the boundaries surrounding the extended family outside of your marriage? And then the second topic of boundaries is boundaries with people of the opposite sex, boundaries that you have decided are going to protect your marriage. And then a little subtitle in there is even things like in the bedroom. Like, what have you decided that your boundaries are going to be to keep your sexual life pure and honoring to to the Lord?
Yeah. All right. So let's jump in. Which one of those subs do you want to go first?
Go with the top one.
Okay, the top one. So we're talking about how to create boundaries that will protect your immediate family.
Right.
And maybe not even, protection, that is a good word, but it's just, actually, before we even talk about this, you mentioned, hey, this might be something that you need to sit down and talk with your spouse about. That's the key to all of this.
Absolutely.
Like, it doesn't do any good if one of you has this boundary or these things that you think you have put into place and the other one has no idea what it is. Like, you have to be on the same page with this. So,
and not only that, but it may be different for everybody. Like we mentioned last week that we've started, we're we've started doing some premarital counseling with our church, but we're going to extend that into our ministry. And from some past experiences that we've had with doing premarital counseling, this doesn't look the same for everybody because everybody's extended family isn't the same. Like you may have a really healthy extended family where you can be a little more open, or you may have an unhealthy extended family where those boundaries have to be a little bit tighter. So that's why it's so important that you talk about this with your spouse to come up with what works for you guys.
We've had a lot of really good discussions with lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds about this just over the years. And I remember in particular, we were leading a small group in our home, and this topic came up. And some of them had some really good insights about how they handle this. But I think for me, it all goes back to the pretty simple understanding of, when you say I do, that's your family.
That's right.
And that doesn't mean that the other family members, extended family, they don't disappear. They're still your family. You still honor and love and respect parents. You still have relationships with siblings. And everybody wants those to be as strong and as healthy as they can be. But all of them take a back seat to your new family.
That's right.
And your new family is you and your spouse. And then as you begin to have children, then obviously they come in there too. But I mean, goodness, we're not even going to go down the road where there also has to be boundaries in some ways for you and your spouse as it pertains to your children.
Sure. Because your relationship is more important than your relationship with your children.
Exactly.
That's why it's so fun to just start with the two of you.
Yeah.
Because that's the first layer and the first line of defense is around the two of you. And then the umbrella will include your children later.
And I know that even families that are really, really healthy, because ours is, and our extended family is very healthy. We have a great relationship with both sides of our family. But even there can become tension because there's this struggle and this conflict and almost kind of a fighting for your time and your energy. And you have to be really careful and make sure that you're on the same page so that those type of things don't become a manipulation and they don't get in the way and cause a barrier or wall between you and your spouse. And so I know that one of the things is you have to talk about it because you have to be united in that. Right. So it's not like I'm just the one that's always having to say no to, your parents or my parents, or it's these are things that we are agreeing on together, and we're going to make sure that we protect our family first.
Right. And, when you communicate with your parents, it's okay if the person who it's their child does the communicating with them, but it needs to be, we feel like at this time, not, well, he says that I can't do this or I don't feel like I should do. It needs to be a we. Like, this is what we've decided as a couple. And, we want you to honor that and to encourage us in that and support us in that. And so I love the idea of being a united front. Even when it comes to little things like who you're spending Christmas with, or, it's like, hey, we decided that this year we're going to, it's always a we. Has to be a we.
Yep. I just think it's so important that you and your spouse, you learn to make decisions on your own. You learn to make decisions that are best for you and your immediate family. You make decisions that you're thinking about, hey, 10 years down the road, when I look back, I want to know that we made that decision together. We agreed on it, and we did what was best for us, not what was best for everybody else or other people. And at the same time, there is this level of, I need to respect them because of, and let's just talk directly about parents. Your parents raised you, for the most part. We know that there's other situations out there, but for the most part, those of you that have parents that are still living, they raised you. You have to have this healthy respect for them because of that, but also not letting it interfere with who you are and who you have decided to be and become as a family. And that, a lot of that is, I mean, there's values in there that come into play. There's certainly time and having to be careful about, how much time, and even like decisions that you make. It is great. Look, parents, and a lot of parents are very healthy. They're wise, and to go for them for advice and suggestions, that's great. But don't let them make decisions for you. There are certainly times where you can go and say, hey, they've got a lot more life. I've never had this happen. And if you trust them and you believe that what they're giving you is going to be godly advice, then by all means lean on that. I mean,
they're kind of like mentors.
Yes, because at that point they move away from being parents, and they're more of coaches, friends, mentors.
Right.
And that's a beautiful thing. If you have that in your life, especially if they're speaking into you in a way that they can say, well, this is what I would do, or this is what I see from looking at it with all these years of experience, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. These are your decisions. So those type things are okay. But when you have family members that are demanding things of you and telling you things to do,
I think that this happens around holidays a lot.
Very much
like demanding that you be at our house, or demanding that you spend this amount of time with us, or they got that holiday, we need this holiday, that type. And a lot of that has to do with your parents and in-laws' hearts, and so you have to be able to see it as such and then try to protect your family from that. When you were talking about seeking advice, I can remember a specific incident with my dad. So I've said many times on here, I'm a daddy's girl, but I have two amazing parents who support us and encourage us. And I wasn't going to my dad about this early on so that I could get ammunition against you. I genuinely was seeking his advice. So when we got married, we both had cars. They were a little bit older cars, but they were ours and they were paid for. And it came time, mine was acting up. And it was like, okay, I think we need to get a new car. But financially, it was going to be really hard for us to get a new car. And so we were having should we get a new car? Should we get a used car? Should we, that debate. And, I like to have a new car. Like sorry, that's me. And I went to my dad because you were saying that we needed to buy a used car because it depreciates and all that, the things that I've learned since then. So don't come at me with Rusty's right. I know. But regardless, I went to my dad and I said, hey, Daddy, my car is messing up. And, we've had this discussion. What do you think? Do you think we should get a new car or a used car? And I will never forget his words. He said, I think whatever Rusty thinks. And I was like, dang it, because I wanted a little ammunition. I wanted to be like, well, my dad said, and my dad was wise enough in that moment to say, he's the leader of your family. You need to, he wasn't saying do what he says. He was just saying, you need to talk to him about that. Like, don't come and try to get. And so what I loved about that is two things. One, my dad saw the value of us making that decision, and he didn't insert himself into that decision making. And I think about that often. Even, we've been married 29 years and I still really value what my parents say and think. I really do, because they're godly people, and I still will seek advice from them, but it's never let me tell you what I think and Rusty's wrong, or I don't even care what Rusty says. I'm going to tell you what I think. It's always in conjunction with, well, what have you and Rusty talked about? And they seek that first.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that as you seek advice and ask for people's advice, that you do go into it with, I'm just trying to gain other people's perspective.
That's right.
And
And
somebody,
some
wisdom, and somebody that's lived longer. And what's been your experience with this? Because I've never had to experience this before.
Right.
I mean, my goodness, I remember the first time we actually went to like a car lot and had to deal with that mess.
It was scary.
Oh my goodness. I mean, sorry if you're a used car salesman out there, but my goodness, that's a hard thing. And for a young couple to go into, I can see how having somebody that's had that experience just to say, hey, watch out for this and be careful with this would, make life so much easier. And so
I think we even took my dad with us one time.
I think we
and
did
we were
one time.
just to not to make any decisions, but just to experience it with him. And he would be like, "Yeah, you see how they did this, and this, and then that, really listening to this." And he didn't make the decision for us, but he's like, "Yeah, I've been here, I've done this, and let me just kind of talk you through it."
Yeah.
So that's a coaching. It's not a do it this way. It is a let me just give you a little experience in that area.
And I think going back to your point, I think even for married couples that have been married for a long time, I do think you need to be really careful, like with your example. And it was a great example and you were honest and said, I was kind of hoping to get a little ammunition that I could come back. And that's one of the things that you need to be really careful, especially like a wife that goes to a dad and is like, okay, well, I want to hear what I want to hear, so that then I can go back and say, well, my daddy does it this way, or my daddy, because that's something that can genuinely be very harmful to a husband.
Yeah. Oh gosh. And I can admit that I had that issue for years. I was lucky enough to grow up with a family that I thought was perfect. And I thought that the way we did things was the right way, the way we opened Christmas presents, the way that I expected you to be able to fix anything, because that's what my daddy did. I mean, even going back, we've used the example before of my dad kept my car clean all the time. And that when you didn't do that, I was disappointed. And that, like, you can't set your husband up for failure or your wife up for failure just because your family did it a different way. And so it's taking all of the things, like we've talked to people where they had to talk about their first Christmas. Like, what is that going to look like? Are we going to spend it with family? Are we going to wake up in our very own house and have Christmas by ourselves, so that sets the pace for when we have children, and then share? Are we going to celebrate Christmas on a different date? Newsflash, you can celebrate Christmas other times than December 25th. Like, you can say, oh, our family's going to celebrate Christmas the weekend before with extended family, or Christmas Eve, or whatever. But it's coming together and saying, this is how we did it as a family. This is how you did it as a family. And what do we want our family to look like? I think the danger in this is what we talked about, where you were saying our small group years ago had some great insight into this. I think that when we were discussing it, it's really easy for you to say, well, Scripture says leave and cleave. Rusty and Heather said we have to make our own boundaries, and we're going to do it this way, with considering no one else. And guys, like what Rusty was saying is, you have to have a respect for your parents and for your in-laws, in that they raised you. They gave you years and years and years of Christmases and holidays and support and love. And I know that's not everybody's story, but it's having a healthy respect for, I can give up a Christmas Eve and go eat dinner with my family, my original family, and take my kids over there so they can see their grandparents and experience that. And so it's finding a balance between being your own entity and also respecting and loving the people well that have poured into you and raised you and loved you well. But the balance has to be with your spouse. You have to agree on it together.
Yeah, and last thing about the holidays and stuff, I know that, like, for us, our Christmas especially is pretty exhausting. And both of our families live in town, and then we have extended family siblings that come as well, and mine don't live here, so when they come, there's this pressure to spend time with them. Not pressure, but we feel it. We want to
it's
be
like
with
they're
them.
here and we never get to see
That's
them.
right. And then my sister's birthday is December 24th, which is a weird thing because it's like, oh, well, we need to celebrate a birthday too. So that eliminates being able to celebrate Christmas. It's just and so it's exhausting. And there have been many times where I've somewhat joked and have been like, let's just go somewhere, just the four of us, us and our two boys, and let's just go and celebrate Christmas all by ourselves. But like you said, it's taking other people into account, and I would never want to steal their joy from that day. If there's any way that we can jump through all the hurdles, jump through all the hoops and over all the hurdles to make it happen so that everybody gets to experience Christmas and the way that they would like to and the joy that they're going to get, we would do it. Yeah. And we can always go and do our trip. Like you said, you don't have to celebrate Christmas on December 25th.
That's right. And so I just think, I encourage y'all, as you think about boundaries with extended family, just think about obviously keeping a respect for that extended family, but what is best for the two of you. And that is when they speak into things and when you're making plans.
Yeah.
It's just allowing them to have a voice, if they've earned that right to have a voice, and they're speaking godly wisdom into you. Doing that and think about it. Like, really think about what they're saying and how that might apply to y'all. But it is ultimately the decision of you and your spouse. Yeah. The second boundary that I wanted to cover was, what was it, Rusty?
Well, boundaries to protect your marriage.
To protect your marriage, because I know that we didn't have those in place. And honestly, when our mentors started and our counselors started talking about boundaries, that was a foreign concept to me. I just was like, what does that mean? Like, I think that I knew I should have boundaries, but I didn't consider you in my boundaries. Does that make sense? No, you're looking at me weird. So, like, maybe I thought, oh, well, I shouldn't talk to that person. But it was never, we came together as a couple and said that boundary was not to have that relationship. Does that make sense? It was more of my decisions and then your decisions individually, and never anything we discussed.
Yeah. And so because of that, I feel like my boundaries were probably way more extreme.
Absolutely.
Than yours.
And when you put them on me and said them, I was like,
smothering
and controlling. Like, I'm sorry, you're going to tell me who I can and can't talk to? That's what the old Heather voice would say.
Well, you got this. This is one of the biggest challenges when two people get married. You're coming from this life of, we were not living together, married as a married couple. And so now all of a sudden we have to bring who we were and bring it into this marriage. And sometimes that's a radical transformation of who you have been, and not necessarily in a bad way, but like, I'm just thinking about the couples out there that maybe they've been single. Well, of course, everybody's been single before, but I'm even thinking of the ones that, maybe they're a little bit older, but not even necessarily a little bit older, but maybe, you have this guy that their best friend could be another female. Yeah. Go before you get married. Same with and again, what's wrong with that? Because you were not married to somebody.
Right. You weren't in a covenant relationship.
Yeah, and same with the female, with the wife. It may be that there were a lot of male friends in their life, and now it doesn't mean that, well, I said I do, you're not my friend anymore. But those relationships change.
Absolutely.
And they have to change. And the problem, I think, what happens is nobody ever talks about that.
Right.
And when you don't talk about it, what ends up happening, let's just take, for example, let's say that you had a best friend that was a male, or not even a best friend, just a really...
Can we use Luke, our oldest son, or is that too weird? He has a really, really, really good friend that's a girl, but she got married.
That's right.
And so now that relationship has to change. He has to consider her husband in everything that he does or says.
Right. Right. And before, that wasn't necessarily the case. They didn't have, there's obviously this respect even when they're dating and things like that. But yes, but what ends up happening if that's never discussed, then if the relationship doesn't really change, then the other spouse starts getting this bitterness and animosity. And when they finally get up the nerve to say something, then it's an attack on that friend.
Right.
And it's an attack on that friendship. And it was never intended to be that way. It was, hey, let's make sure we're very comfortable with the interaction that you now have because it's a different relationship. And if that's, hey, we're going to be friends with that friend together. We're going to be couple friends, but there shouldn't be these conversations that take place away from me.
Especially about your spouse.
Yes. I mean, there's things that have to change. And some of you may be out there going, wait, no. Why? I don't want that to change. This is the decision and the covenant that you're making. And the reason why we're saying, we wish we could go back and say this before, is because if you don't have those discussions, we're just telling you it is a landmine that is going to explode one day. And I don't know how it's going to explode, but it's going to explode. Yeah. And so these type boundaries of just, again, maybe you get married and one of you already has a job and you're already used to working with members of the opposite sex. And maybe you even go out to lunches and things like that because you're not married. And then all of a sudden you get married, but you don't talk about that being a problem. Well, let me tell you, you go out a few times with that coworker like you used to do, and when it comes up one day, there's going to be a massive fight because you haven't talked about it.
Right.
And so these are the type of things that you have to say, I'm different now because I am married. My loyalty, all of everything is to you. And so what do we need to do that makes each other comfortable? And here's the other part of this. Both of you may not even really realize as a newlywed what those boundaries should be. Because you feel like, oh, it's fine. Yeah. This is the way it's always been. And that's where you need to go to people that have lived through the heartache and lived through the pain of getting it wrong. Yeah. So they can say, no, let's make sure that you guys are going ahead and you're putting in these extreme boundaries. And I'm saying extreme because they need to be clear and very deliberate. Yeah. It's not like, as it comes up, we'll make some decisions. Yeah. It's just it's very important that the steps of this is a healthy marriage and these are the healthy boundaries that are put in place in a healthy marriage. Right. So let's follow those.
Yep. And that includes boundaries like in the bedroom, like I mentioned at the very beginning. There could be a couple, whether you're fixing to get married or you're already married, that it's like that's a source of tension because it's like, whoa, you expected this out of our sexual relationship and I expected this, and those two things are very different because there's lots of areas in sex that you might have a different opinion than your spouse. Like, oh, I totally feel comfortable with this. And, oh, you don't want to do that? Like, do you not love me? Those types of things. But guys, it's okay for you to have discussions about that and what you're going to allow and not allow or do and don't do as long as it's honoring to the Lord. if you are trying to bring in porn or something that it degrades your spouse, degrades other people, and is not honoring to the Lord, then it's a no.
Right.
Even if your spouse is like, but it could get us excited, or it could, make things more fun. That's not God honoring. Mm-hmm. Now, there's other things that you just may not feel comfortable with, and y'all need to have a discussion about that, because we have said 186 times that what happens when you have unmet expectations is disappointment. And so you have to go in to marriage, and even if you're married, have these discussions about, this is what I expect our sex life to be like, and our love life, and how this is how I feel loved. It is all communication. So you have to talk about those boundaries before you get married. And if you're already married, then talk about them now.
And the beauty of your physical relationship with your spouse is there's a lot of freedom. Mm-hmm. There really is a lot of freedom when it's between you and your spouse and in the bedroom. But like Heather said, if it's something that goes against Scripture, mm-hmm. and it goes against something that would not be God, something that's not God honoring, then there's no question. You don't do it. But as far as the other, it's so great that God gives that freedom. But within that freedom, there's also your spouse that you take into consideration. And like Heather said, it's not necessarily, I don't love you because I don't want that to be a part of our sexual life. It's these things, maybe they trigger something, maybe there's something from the past that, there's all sorts of reasons. And you discuss those things, but you discuss them in a healthy way, and you say, "Yeah, I'm just not really comfortable with that. That doesn't make me." And then that's the freedom. That part of it ends right there. Like, mm-hmm. It's not. Then you're not pressuring, right. And you're not saying, "Well, I know this couple. They do this, or mm-hmm. you should do this." It's not that. It's you're doing what each other are comfortable with, mm-hmm. and look, it's okay to try things even and then be like, that wasn't for us, right. That kind of thing. But there's freedom, but it's so much a part of let's talk about it. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about it and make sure that we're comfortable. So, go.
I need to say one more thing. I need to go back. Okay. I don't think I've ever done this where I've gone back and said, I said something that I shouldn't have said. So I want to make sure that I was clear. I think that I said you need to talk about these things before you get married, like as far as the sexual stuff. I don't know that that's a discussion that you have to have before you get married. Right. That is not like talking about your sex life. Like we're doing this whole series about our boys. One's engaged, one may have a few years. That's not something you want to talk about right now, mm-hmm. because it's very tempting, and it's also it's between a husband and a wife. So in this, what you can do and will do in the bedroom honestly could be saved until you get married, because you're choosing to love your spouse and honor them no matter what. And so after you get married and you're like, this is what our sex life is going to look like, that's a better place to have that conversation.
Well, and that's great that you said, because those type of details don't need to be discussed. Would I say that, is it healthy to discuss some things about sex in premarital counseling? Sure. Absolutely. Yes. Because I do feel like that there's a lot of premarital counseling that just shies away mm-hmm. from that kind of thing, and they don't bring it up, and then you get married and you're like, well, my goodness, we never talked about it. So talking about just the generalities of expectations and things like that, especially if you're meeting with another couple, and that's what I would highly encourage people to do, is meet with another couple that can be a mentor through mm-hmm. this, and ask them those questions. Yeah. Be the one that says, hey, in this safe place, I feel like we need to discuss this because this could be a problem when we get married, because I have this trauma in my past, or I have there's an expectation because of something that's happened. Can you guys help us and journey with us through that? And it it's not like, hey, well, we're going to talk about, lingerie and what you think, is appropriate. It's not that.
Right.
It's let's deal with the issues. And then when you guys get married, then you can talk about the details. And I joke around a lot and say sex is my favorite topic. So anytime Heather wants to come and talk about that to me,
And I
I'm
love
like,
that you called it lingerie instead of costumes.
You call it costumes. I call it lingerie. But but you're right. There is a fine line there, and it's not even. I don't even want to say it's a fine line. It's save some of those discussions because that's a discussion between married couples. But there is permission and encouragement to have those conversations with trusted a married couple that's being your mentor or doing premarital counseling with you. Right. It can be an incredible resource.
Yep.
So don't shy away from it.
That's right.
There.
And as you talk about all of these boundaries, whether it's in the bedroom, whether it's with opposite sex, whether it's with your in-laws, seek guidance from these couples that have a godly marriage, a God-honoring marriage, whether it's in premarital counseling or you find a couple in your church, because you don't want to make decisions about boundaries out of fear. Mm-hmm. They need to be made out of just wisdom in how to walk in a God-honoring way with your spouse.
And if I could make a suggestion about premarital counseling, I think, the traditional sense was always, the pastor that's marrying you. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? But my suggestion is, even if you're required to do that, maybe the pastor that marries you, maybe he requires that. I would recommend finding a godly couple that's older than you that you could, instead of saying, will you do premarital counseling, you just say, we would love for you guys to mentor us. And then you spend a little bit of time before you get married and you hit some of the spots that might be some conflict when you get married, but it doesn't need to stop there.
Right.
What I think is even more important is journeying through those next 6 months or maybe that next year, even if it's once a month or just you have permission to reach out to us.
Right.
Because what happens with premarital counseling usually is, hey, we get it done. And then when you've gotten married and then good luck, see ya. And then it's like, oh my goodness, nobody told us this.
Exactly.
So that would be my suggestion.
So keep reaching out to those people and making sure you keep contact with them.
Yep, for sure.
Yep.
Okay, guys. Hey, thanks for joining us this week. Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on all of the different social media platforms. Make sure you follow us on these podcasts and YouTube and all that, and then share it with somebody. And if you feel led, please give a rating and review because it helps more people to see our content. All right, thanks. See you next time.
Peace.